Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of the Now What Show. I'm your host, Amber Christian. Today, I am pleased to welcome Doug from Jewelry Monk, and we'll get into his story in just a minute. But first, I would like to say a huge thank you to our season sponsor, Go Imagine. Go Imagine is focused on building the maker community through a handmade marketplace, maker business education, custom websites, and a social app for artists called Maker Circle. The Go Imagine community includes thousands of handmade business owners throughout the United States. These owners are passionate about growing a handmade platform dedicated to quality handmade items while focusing on social good that's helping children in need. Check them out at goimagine.com. And so, without further ado, I would like to welcome Doug from Jewelry Monk. Welcome to the show, Doug. And can you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you, Amber. A little bit about me. I've been actually a jewelry maker for 40 years. I started pretty much right out of high school. I got a job in a jewelry factory in the Black Hills of South Dakota making Black Hills gold, of course.
Hmm.
If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of the grapes and leaves and things like that. The owner of the company kind of seen something in me he really liked, so he took me and he kind of under his wing and showed me every facet and in the operation of jewelry making. So I moved around quite a bit and eventually landed in what they call model making. So I was
Hmm.
a professional model maker for a jewelry company. And then word got around when I got real good at it. So I was always offered jobs all over the place. So I've lived everywhere from Seattle and New York City to the Dominican Republic and China, working with different factories, helping them fine tune their production and they're doing training and stuff like that. About well, it was probably 7 years ago. I stepped away from that, and I'm still a traveling consultant from time to time.
Hmm.
And I was doing that, and then decided to focus more on the training end of it for myself. So I started my webpage and a YouTube channel under jewelrymonk.com, and just focused on training jewelry. So I come up with video lessons and things like that, and started promoting that and I was doing this all out of my house and my
Hmm.
garage and my extra basement and all of it. So it was all over the place. So I said, you know what, I need a building to do that. So I opened up this shop 7 years ago downtown Rapid City, and it called it the Jewelry Monk Studio and Training Center. So that was kind of the focus. I was doing classes and workshops on everything from soldering and stone setting to casting and CAD work and 3D printing and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Then about the time COVID hit, nobody was flying in anymore for, you know, for workshops or anything like that. So it's like, okay, I've got to pivot a little bit. So at that time, I've always wanted to do a line of jewelry. So we created a line of jewelry and marketed under the name Jewelry by DeCory. And the first line was a line we called the Lakota Legacy line. So there's a number of pieces. I think there's 60 or 70 pieces in the line.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
And yeah, well, you got pendants and earrings and rings and things like that. So,
Hmm.
but they're all, so like you have like buffaloes and hummingbirds and butterflies and things like that. And every piece has a video story that ties that piece and tells why that's significant to the Lakota culture. So it's a neat program, and it's teaching has always been in my DNA. So I can use jewelry as a vehicle to teach other people about culture.
Hmm.
And the reason we call it Jewelry by DeCory was DeCory is my mother's maiden name, who that side of the family is originally from the Rosebud Indian tribe,
Hmm.
and they grew up on the Rosebud Reservation. And I'm an enrolled member in the reservation, so I just took these designs, and they're not necessarily Native American looking designs. They're
Hmm.
streamlined, simple designs um, on purpose because I didn't want to make them look like traditional Native American jewelry because there's a lot of people in this area doing that and doing it well. I don't want to take
Hmm.
anything away from
Right.
them. So I just want to take some really neat designs that will sell by themselves, but use them as a vehicle to teach other people about the culture of the Lakota Sioux.
Hmm.
So that's kind of where that went, right after the pandemic. So that's been our focus for the past few years is
Sure.
creating those
And
lines of jewelry.
And then we'll unpack that a little bit because I think this is an important thing when you're in an early stage business, right? So you've got Jewelry Monk, you've got the training school, you've got people literally flying in from other countries or dedicating time to come and learn this craft of jewelry making, a lot of which is being lost. But to learn that actual craft side of it, then we have this little thing called a pandemic, and there it
Hmm.
goes. All of a sudden, nobody's traveling, borders are closed, a lot of people can't come in, like all the kinds of things you were doing. So you had to say, okay, well, that's still there. So were you still producing YouTube videos then, even during the pandemic? Because you've built quite a following on YouTube with Jewelry Monk, haven't you?
Yeah, I have, and that was kind of the focus. It's like, okay, now what can we continue to do? So, like I said, I've got 3 or 4 different um, video series that I sell. I haven't been focusing on that in a while since the production jewelry came in, but
Hmm.
yeah, it was then okay. How can I create content for people without them showing up at my door?
Hmm.
So like I said, on the YouTube channel, which is, I think it's called Doug Napier Jewelry Monk, and there's 120, 130 free videos on there, and they're all simple videos. I try to keep them, 3 to 5 to 8 minutes long. Just because I've been on videos, YouTube channels before where you watch a 20-minute video and there's a minute and a half of content that you could really use. You know,
Right.
so I try to get in, give you the content, maybe have a little fun with it, and then get out.
Yep.
So a lot of them are in chewable pieces and stuff, but it's all a lot of the basic things like this is how to properly solder a thick piece to a thin piece because people have problems with that.
Hmm.
Understanding that you don't melt solder with the flame, you melt it with the heat type of thing.
Hmm.
So it's all basic things like that are being lost. I said
Hmm.
with the technology that's coming in, you you've got 3D printing and casting and all that stuff, and there's a place for that, but still, you've got hammers and saws and chisels and things like that you can make things as well, and we don't want to get that lost while we're bringing in the new technology. And there's a place for both of them, and it's fun when you can sit down with both technologies and marry them together to create neat pieces of jewelry. So,
Absolutely. And then we also had this little thing called a supply chain that blew up for most of us during a
yeah.
pandemic as well. And so I think to your point of the even if you preserve and keep the skills, even if you don't actually use them all of the time, there are situations like that where having those skills, you can revert back to them to fill gaps or to build experiments with jewelry or to do things that maybe you don't want to use other materials for. So there's a whole time and place for building that skill and that craft. And so speak a little bit more to what has happened that a lot of the underlying craft part was lost. Can you talk a little bit about the dynamics for those that might not be familiar with what's happened in the jewelry industry?
Yeah, so when I was working with different companies, it was about 1998, 99 that these companies really started looking at computer design and
Mhm.
saying, there's a place for this. It cuts down on time. It gives you a more precise piece. And then you got, at that time, there wasn't a lot of 3D printing going on. It was all milling. So you had 3-axis, 4-axis milling machines that you would create something on a computer, mill it out in wax, and then cast it.
Mhm.
And now, you know, the technology has come so far that I can sit at a bench and create something and spend 20 hours working on something to get it fine tuned, or I can sit in front of a computer and in 3 or 4 hours have it finished, send it to my printer that prints it in an hour and a half. So in half a day, I could have a piece ready to go to cast. So you can balance that stuff and say, that is a great tool. But if you say that is your only tool, then you're missing out on so much more because there's certain things that doesn't, attend to. So you really got to, you know, kind of work on both skills. Work on the 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 technology of the metal, how it works, how it flows. Can you cast it? Can you melt it? Things like that. And it all kind of fits in together. So
hmm
um,
And it's also a piece of the, sharpening the creativity saw, so to
yeah.
speak. In especially when you're working on craft as well, there you're right, and there's the production aspects, especially for those first things that you create. But at a certain point in time, you can find yourself either getting stuck or stagnant if you're missing some of that the underlying fundamentals around
Yeah.
how you can make that. And so to me, it's interesting seeing that it's like, no, if you actually go back to some of those underlying fundamentals, that it seems like to me can enhance your creativity because you're like, oh, but if we did this sort of like this, now I could create
Hmm.
something very new, very different from
Hmm.
that. And without that, without really understanding sort of the underlying tech, whether it's material tech, product tech, of how all that works, at a certain point you could get stuck in your creative cycle in that
Yeah.
there's like a ceiling where there's a lot less of a ceiling when you understand the fundamentals of how all the stuff works. It's
Yeah.
endless creativity at
Yeah.
that point because now you have so many more things that you can work with. Like the world opens in whole new ways
Yeah.
when you do that. So now then this pandemic comes along, you have to put a lot of that on hold. You're still kind of doing your YouTube videos, and then you launch this jewelry by DeCory. Let's go into a little more. What I thought was very interesting about this is you are making sure that you're not infringing on what other people are already doing. So you're kind of
Hmm.
looking for, okay, why? Because I don't want to become one more entrant in a crowded market, which is
Hmm.
great. Talk a little more about the thought process around both product and marketing and how you kind of pulled all that together in the launch of it to make sure you weren't competing with some of those existing products.
Yeah.
Speak about that a little more.
Okay. And I think a lot of that has to do with if you look at the history of what I've done, there's in the DNA of everything I do is kind of teaching. So I think that I'm created in that mindset of teaching. So even when I make jewelry, like I tell people, I can sit at my bench and file on a piece and using the light to reflect my file marks and stuff like that. It's very meditative to me. It's my
Hmm
happy place. So it's like, so when I can show that to somebody else, it brings joy to me. So then when I come into creating a jewelry line, I'm not saying I want to make jewelry for jewelry's sake. If
hmm
that's the whole purpose, I'm out. I'll go find something different to do. I don't want to make jewelry just to make money. I want to make jewelry as a vehicle to do something else. So this
hmm
line that we come out with, the first line, the Lakota Legacy line, really what it is it's a vehicle to teach other people about culture and storytelling. So all of the pieces have video stories that go with them that tell the significance of the buffalo to the Lakota people, why that's so important, or the hummingbird, why that's important. So I'm using the pieces, and it's still a fun process to make the pieces and produce the pieces. But my end goal is really education.
hmm
So the next line of jewelry we came out with was called our nature series, and there's a dozen pieces of things that you would find out in nature. We got cattails and sunflowers and acorns and mushrooms, but still, we attach story to those as well, saying, "Did you know that you could make um, bread out of cattails?" So
I
it's
didn't know
like
that.
things like that. Yeah, yeah. So you can take it, you can pound it into a mash, mix it, turn it into flour and stuff like that. So it's again using that jewelry as a vehicle to teach other people.
hmm
This year we launched another piece called, or another line called our Ancient Faith series. They all look like ancient Roman coins, but they've got Christian symbols on them with story that tell the significance of that symbol, why it's important to the faith.
hmm
So again, everything that I do is undercoated with education. You know,
hmm Yep.
so
So
if you
it
look at
sounds
the,
like
the website and the YouTube channel and all that, really it's just a way for me to educate others about jewelry making and culture and storytelling and life.
Mhm. And it sounds like what part of your thought process as you're ideating and coming up with these different lines is you're you're really looking at it a little more holistically, which I think, in the early stages when someone's launching a business, they're thinking about I'm just mastering the production of the thing I like to make and all of that, where you're asking a slightly different question about, okay, if what we're trying to really do here is to educate people about these parts of our culture, their significance. It's a different question you're asking when you're creating the line at the beginning, which is leading you to different answers in terms of, I should be creating video that go along with the story. I need the right educational materials that support that craft and what I'm creating. So, what strikes me as interesting about your process is you're asking a different question at the beginning as you're ideating and developing the product line, and then you're putting the supporting materials around it. Because so often people will say, I'm going to produce a thing now, how am I going to market it? What audience am I going to sell it to? You're talking about, if I wanted to teach and honor and embrace this, what are the vehicles for doing that through that product? And then what other materials have to exist as part of that to create the full experience for that customer that's buying that piece of jewelry?
Exactly.
And to me, that feels fundamentally unique in terms of what I hear. And so it's not just the, well, somebody else figure out, how we're going to market and sell it. Like, oh, no, no, no. We're thinking about the marketing so that we can start identifying the audiences up front.
Hmm.
And that's got to make the process a little easier of getting through those stages to launch,
Yeah.
because it just sort of flows out because you're answering a different question.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that comes into when before I even design the jewelry, I've already got my market in mind. Okay, this is who I'm trying to reach. So let's
Hmm.
create something for them. And even in the designs, I don't design things so that they look cool, even though some of them do, but they've all got to have purpose. If I'm going to put
Hmm.
a curl here, it's got to be there for a reason. So something's got to be leading it up to it. It's not just a curl in the middle of a piece because it's there, but it's got to be there for a purpose. So all of these things kind of fit together. The jewelry is there for a purpose because I'm educating other people about certain aspects of life, and the designs kind of lead into that as well. So there's some designs that work, some of them that we kind
Yeah.
of missed it on that one, but that's all part of life. And
Right.
even when I'm teaching, one of the most important things that I teach is being having the ability to adapt. So I tell,
Mhm.
okay, I've got a project that I want to do. I've got these tools in front of me that I've got to be able to do them with. So how am I going to manage that? How am I going to get this done with that, and that? So if I'm sitting there and I'll create a piece of jewelry, and if I've got to do the same piece of jewelry again, I'll use different tools to do it. I won't say
Mhm.
this worked last time, so I'm going to do it again. I'm going to say that worked last time, but I want to figure out a way that I can use different tools and get the same process. And you can have the two pieces and look at them and say they're identical. But yeah, but I use two different processes to get there because I'm teaching myself how to be adaptable, not only at the bench in jewelry making, but in life as well, because things come at us all the time. So when I
Mhm.
started out, as my training center, things were going well until this little thing called COVID came in. So it's like now I've got to learn how to adapt and still get to where I want to go, but I might have to take a different trail.
Mhm.
So now,
Exactly.
so now I'm taking all of the production lines that we do, and we're still doing some of them, but that is going to be less of my emphasis because I'm trying to put all of my energy back into the training center again. Because my long-term goal is to have a regional trade school that teaches jewelry making.
Mhm. Well, wonderful. This is fantastic. I think your journey in the keep the one thing going and alive until the conditions change again, right? Because we knew that eventually it would change back, but it was a matter of, you had to ride out what this was going to look like, and what was people's appetite to travel going to be again, to really bring back that craft. So in launching the interim jewelry line with an entirely different thing going on, and then now coming back to it as well, and they can coexist, right? So
Yeah,
you can still
exactly.
be producing the jewelry line, just de-emphasizing it, but it's still there. Now you've got more revenue streams, is ultimately, which
Hmm.
helps stabilize the business overall as well. So tell our listeners, watchers, where they can find out more information about you and how they can learn more about you.
Well, you can about me. You can, like I said, got my YouTube channel, which is Doug Napier Jewelry Monk. I've got jewelrymonk.com, which is the training side of it, and then the production and the jewelry side is jewelrybydecory.com. And
Hmm.
then I'm also on all the social medias, the Facebook and Instagrams, and I'm on all of those as well. So you can look under Jewelry Monk or Jewelry by DeCory, and I'm constantly, got stuff going on. We also, in our shop, we service the community through custom jewelry and repairs as well. So you'll see stuff like that flash up, and
Mhm.
that's another joy that I like. Especially when people bring in something that's broken or that doesn't fit, or it was their grandmother's and it's really not their style and stuff. So we can take all of that, repurpose it into something that they can either enjoy again or enjoy for the first time, and still knowing that this metal that's in this new design was my great grandmother's and these stones were hers as well. So you still carry on that tradition, but it's not going to sit in a sock drawer anymore. So I enjoy doing that as well. The local area is, we service them through custom jewelry and repairs all the time. So
Mhm. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone listening in, and a special thank you to our sponsor, Go Imagine. Until
all right,
next
well,
time.
thanks, Amber.
Mhm.